Hello all together. I hope you had a fine lunch, and we're starting now with CSAF, not SBOM. If it's a solution, to which problem? And there are a lot of problems which I will be tackling in the beginning, in the motivation part, also for letting people to catch up if they're still with lunch. Going more into the details of CSAF, their relationship towards SBOM and VEX, about an implementation and the call for action. Let's start. If you think of the priorities of asset owners and operators, it's revenue, uptime, it's maintenance, and cybersecurity is not one of them. If it's a regulatory requirement, like safety, okay, they have to deal with it, but it's not a priority. And again, if it's not a priority, it's somewhere quite down the line. And this talk will be tackling a small part of the cybersecurity topic. It's about update and patch management. Okay, patch and update management. What kind of updates? So there are feature updates, bug fixes, and security fixes. Feature updates are easy. It's a major release, and you take your time to install it, and you do it during the next maintenance cycle, downtime. And you're quite sure you know if you need it, a bug fix as well. Usually it's not so critical, and business will tell you when to install it, how to install it. But a security fix, when do you install it? When do you act on it? And there's this great little Bobby comic from Sunday last week, and it defines, or it outlines one of these problems, because as working for the German government, I always advise critical infrastructures, do your patches and updates. And they answer, yeah, well, is it really necessary? Why should I do this? It's hard. And all this debate, should I really do it, is part of this problem. So Art Mannion did a great talk in S4 2019, where he outlined that you can actually do three things if there's a vulnerability in your product. You can patch now, you can patch later during next downtime, next maintenance cycle, or you accept the risk, which means never. He later, in the next year, he revised this a little bit, but I like this with now, later, never. And if you think, what does now mean? Patch now means you have to stop production every time an update comes? Whoa. Patch later means you have a potential risk because you have unpatched systems. And accept risk is the one thing which is performed most of the times. Even, I call it silent acceptance, because you don't know which systems you have, therefore you don't know that you have to patch them. So you're accepting the risk. And the risk tends to go up in this direction, but the cost goes down. If you don't do anything, well, if nothing happens, you don't spend a lot of money till something happens, and then you have to spend a lot. And when do you patch? For example, if you look simply at the CVSS score, patch now says, yeah, everything which is critical, meaning CVSS 9 and higher, or CVSS high, which means 7 and above, or do you say everything below CVSS 7 is acceptable? That doesn't take into account where the risk is situated, where the risk is lying. So that's one of the problems. Next problem, and nobody is talking about this one, are scaling issues. So how many advisories are there times the number of vendors you have in your installation, in your critical infrastructure, wheresoever. Number of advisories is quite hard. So my team usually processes between 800 and 1,200 per year, but that's not the complete overview. We have the numbers of CVEs. I don't like this picture too much because it implies that it's an exponential growth but you see for the last 4 years it's more like a saturation. But the saturation comes from a limit of the CNAs, of the authorities which issue CVEs. And there's another great paper by Aaron Leverett, which the idea was born at S4 2020, here when we were walking at the beach, and he is trying to predict the vulnerabilities in a certain software by a certain vendor. And he can do that with a quite amount of, he can, how can I say this? The probability of a certain number of vulnerabilities in a product can be estimated. I would recommend to look into this paper if you want to know how much money you have to, as a vendor, how much money you have to take for maintenance of a certain product. And at the moment, the focus is on vulnerabilities. All the names CVE, common vulnerability and exploitation, NVD, National Vulnerability Database. It's a focus on vulnerabilities. But the patches which don't get an CVE or NVD entry are not visible. And how many updates are there? How many patches are there without a CVE entry? I made a visual estimation. It's probably exaggerated. But nevertheless, there are some vulnerabilities without a fix, which could have a CVE or could not have a CVE. But the updates without a CVE usually are higher than the ones with a CVE. And then there are these hype cases. Log4Shell, for example, is one of them. Every time a vendor or a security researcher or a security company comes up with a new website, a new hype name, you know, okay, now we've got a lot of CVEs and a lot of fuss about it, but these hype cases are dangerous. And the next thing is, where do you get this information that there's a patch available or that there's a vulnerability? Okay, from the vendor, for sure, the national CCERT, ICS cert, great. Do you follow security researchers on Twitter? What do your regulators say? Perhaps ISACs? How do they communicate with you? With RSS feeds? Do you have to log into a portal? Do you receive an email? And then again, what do they send you? A text file, a PDF, an HTML, all part of the problem. And finding these is quite worrisome. My team does it on a daily basis, and we know it. This is just a short outline of all these advisories which are available. And then you have to analyze them. And ICS cert, HTML, Schneider PDF, Siemens text, not well. And what should an asset owner do? Patches and updates. It's nearly not feasible, or it is not feasible doing this on a daily basis. And there's something which we call time frame of concern. The first one is the vendor part. So the vendor becomes aware of a vulnerability, analyzes it, and releases a patch and advisory or advisory. Okay, that's the vendor part. Then there's the operator part. They do something. And there's a time frame between these two. And we want to shorten these time frame of concern. Reduce the manual labor, reduce the work you have to put into till the asset owner does something. And this is CSAF. CSAF is the solution to all the aforementioned problems. Okay, CSAF stands for Common Security Advisory Framework. It's an OASIS open standard. You can download it, you can use it, and it defines security advisories. It defines the contents of security advisories, mandatory fields, their completeness, type of issuing parties, how if you are, for example, a simple provider, if you are a trusted provider, which means you have a workflow, you can sign your advisories, or if you're an aggregator, like, for example, BSI in Germany, or ENISA, and they will collect advisories from all from the vendors, from their constituents, and then have a database for them you can access. In CSAF are also some data protection considerations included, where to find these advisories on your website, that it can be scraped automatically, and there are certain profiles defined, like what you need to do for a certain type of advisory. And it's vendor independent. At the moment, every vendor does their own thing, have their own system, and this is vendor independent. And for example, Microsoft is also part of the standardization group, as well as Red Hat, Cisco, and Siemens, for example. And what is this CSAF? CSAF consists of several parts, and you see a JSON document. It's more or less a simple document, but also there is a workflow defined in the standard. But this document is quite easy, relatively easy. What you see is that the product tree, the middle part, is more than 2,000 lines long. And also the vulnerability part is something like 300 lines long, which is skipped out here because it's not really human readable anymore, but it has some kind of completeness to it. And if you look at a system of maturity, at the moment we're at the bottom. You need a text editor, writer, just to write it, to write an advisory. Yeah, that's enough. And you need a kind of human-readable format. That means, well, you can write it down in paragraphs. And on the other hand, you need someone to read it. It could be a web browser, it could be a PDF reader, don't care. And then we want to move the system up for that the vendor uses a content management system, and this content management system generates a machine-readable format. The asset owner now can filter the results or filter the advisories to tailor them to their products. And if you have an asset management, to do, we call it magic matching algorithm. I know that's a bit hand-waving at the moment, but we'll get there. And the major question, which is also part of the title of this talk, why don't we use SBOM for that? And my thesis is that SBOM is great for communication, for transparency between vendors. But as an operator, you don't need a complete SBOM. You need CSAF. And going back, SBOM, Alan Friedman will be talking tomorrow at 3 p.m. on stage 3, together with Ginger. And ask him every question you have about SBOM. I'm just saying, an SBOM does not tell you, if you've got a vulnerable product, what to do. An SBOM just tells you, you have a vulnerable product. Unfortunately, I can't see your hands, but I would ask you, okay, you're an operator. Who of you dared to patch log4 shell manually in your control system? Who of you would ever do that without the help, the authorization of the vendor? And this is where CSAF comes into play. It focuses on the advisory part. It focuses on mitigating countermeasures. It uses the existing communication between the operator and the vendor. It's not something new, something you have to submit to a central database, nothing. You just have to change the format of the document. And it reduces the time frame of concern. It makes it faster. And the standard is ready to use. It's mature. It's nothing, and it's not a German invention or a European thingy. It's a big one. It's an OASIS standard. They also did SGML or OpenDoc, so it's mature. And together, the system will succeed. neither SBOM alone nor CSAF alone will succeed. There are still a lot of open things you have to consider. SBOM as well as CSAF needs an asset management. Dale said at the beginning, what if we skip the asset management part? Won't work. So we still need the asset management. The difference is that CSAF can be tailored towards the operator's environment. At the moment, there are issues, or not issues, but challenges identifying the correct product. So at the moment, you still need some manual work, but it reduces dramatically the amount of workforce you have to put into identifying affected products within your installation. You might have outsourced it, you might have a third party doing that for you, but the change is coming. And there is a VEX, the Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange. If you heard of SBOM, you probably heard of VEX. It's a kind of negative security advisory. In hype cases, in major cases where everybody is screaming, are you affected, are you affected? It's a relief of the support team which says, yes, we use this product, no, we are not affected. Or we are not using this library at all, we are not affected. And here comes again the relationship between CSAF and VEX, because there is a profile within CSAF which completely can be used as VEX, as Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange. And what I would like to mention is that VEX is at the moment not an official standard. It's not an ISO, it's not an OASIS standard, it's a working group within CISA who is shaping this. But it's necessary because VEX can also tell you, allows the vendor to tell the customer it's work in progress. We started looking into it, but we don't have any information at the moment, but we are working on it. That support is not being hammered with what should we do, but we're working on it. Or we found that we are affected, we're working on a patch. It's for the fast communication in the early stages of a major case. So looking, what does a vendor have to do to implement CSAF? This is, again, a timeline. A vulnerability comes somewhere, let it be internal finding or external finding. They look into it, they prepare the patch or mitigating countermeasures, they write them down, and only the last two parts are affected by the CSAF. They should probably use some kind of content management system, and they should be able to sign the document you just saw to verify the ownership, that it's a valid advisory. For example, a PDF at the moment or a text file is not signed in most of the cases. That means a malicious attacker could send out fake advisories. With this system, they are signed, and it's, yeah, they are, I would say, more secure. And here comes again a small tree. If you already have an existing publishing workflow and many small and medium vendors which are necessary for their sector but are too small and don't issue advisories on a daily basis, they're not experienced in doing that. And there we have a tool which is called Segvisogram. In a few slides you will see it. If you are a major vendor, you have probably a high level of automation. Then you need a converter or some kind of system in between which generates the JSON files. And if you don't have a high level of automation, well, great. And again, you can use the existing customer relationships. Or you could convert these JSON files with a simple Python script, again, to Word, PDF, text, whatsoever. It's coming from a structured format and making something else out of it is much easier. From the operator's perspective, there is more to do. So a operator user retrieves the advisory, looks into the asset database, Excel sheet, am I affected? They decide what to do, then they have to act, and then they have to document it. And there is a lot more change is necessary. So they need a system to download the advisories, to compare them with the asset database, and this is this magical matching algorithm I was talking about. Then the user has to decide what to do. It's the stakeholder-specific vulnerability categorization which is needed here. Again, something very cool made by CertCC, which allows you to automatically branch your decision if you what to do to make something like a filtering or to help you making these decisions. And then again, in the asset matching system, you should document what you've done. And the left part of the slide, there we see a lot of commercial opportunities. At the moment, all the part of collecting these advisories, putting them into a unified format, and giving them to the customer, there are several companies out there doing that at the moment. And all of them are doing the same, but only for their product. And you have to pay a lot of money to doing so. And with CSAF, it becomes, well, they have to look for a different business unit model. And I would suggest that this going towards the asset management, CSAF being part of the asset management, is the way to go to. SSVC, it's not a digital twin, it's not a complete representation of your installation, but it's a decision tree. You can look it up, SSVC, on CertCC's website. It's nice, it's still work in progress, but CISA is already using it. And there are a lot of tools already being developed or in development, all this work in progress. The documents in the middle part are from colleagues from Switzerland, from Arma Swiss, with which we work together. And the top one, the Sequvisogram, I don't know if you heard of Vulnogram, a tool to generate CVSS scores. And this one is a tool for writing security advisories, if you are a vendor. And to check if your advisory, for example, your content management system has generated, is standard compliant. And we have companies, not too small ones in Germany, who use this. And by the way, this editor is more like a proof of the standard itself than of the real, made for usability. So we are doing an update this year. We're making it nicer. We're making it better. Looking into the roadmap of CSAF. So committee specification 01 has passed. We're now at the next specification. The commenting phase will be ending end of the month. Two companies, Arista and Siemens, already published their advisories in CSAF. And Siemens once did a fun job. They made a security advisory, and the PDF had something like 16-ish pages, I think 16 pages, because they listed every affected product and the range of the product which was affected. It was not fun to read anymore, because as a human operator, you had to sift through them and find, is my product listed here? But again, you need this clarified or this detailed information that you can decide if you're affected or not. We also issued our first CSAF security advisories. We will be investing more, we are now at the now part, into tools development, more tools. I already told about Red Hat, Oracle, Cisco. They will be joining. We've got Schneider Electric. We've got CERT at VDE, which is a commercial CERT within Germany, where companies like Phoenix Contact, Vago, Beckhoff, and other SMEs are part of it. So we will see more adoption coming. And we're talking with vendors with the major vendors of the world to get on board to adopt CSAF. And we are working on an author guidance that the advisories don't differ too much. Looking at the European perspective, we try to include CSAF in the upcoming NIS2 directive. Since there are more than 25 countries discussing it, I can't promise that it will be part of the European NIS2 directive, but vulnerability handling and disclosure will be part of it. Therefore, I think we can sneak it still in. What for sure, CSAF will be becoming a CVE numbering authority and CSAF aggregator. So you will be finding CSAF also on the topics. And for research, the smart matching. I heard that the wise guys at INL are looking into this, about this unique product identifier, how to generate them, it would be great if every vendor just had a simple network SNMP, set monitoring protocol, which custom MIPS, you could query the device and it tells you the version number of hardware, software, firmware, whatever is inside. That would be great. At the moment, it's not. So we are working heavily on this. We have several people there investing 6 figures plus in the topic, but we can't do it alone. And this is this talk. You want to generate the future. This is the future of advisories. There is no other way if you look into automatic processing of advisories, and we need your endorsement. If you put CSAF, or if you put something like vendor should provide advisories in a structured format like CSAF, that would be great. Again, SBOM is good for certain things, but not for advisories and not for processing these advisories. You could also use VEX, and since CSAF will become, or is a profile within VEX, also possible, but nevertheless, SBOM is not the solution for your advisory problem. A lot of links here. Reach out to me afterwards. If you use the app, if you see me somewhere running around out there, and or on the mail address you see here, csaf@bsi.bund.de. And again, I'm really grateful to be here and being on S4 stage. Yay! So thank you and goodbye.